It is March 26th, and the day of the week is Wednesday, so it's time again for another edition of Wednesday with Walton and Reis. I'm Brian Walton, and this is Kyle Reis. Welcome, Kyle.
Hello, Brian. How are you tonight?
Doing fine. And folks, by the way, you should know by now, but I'll remind you that you can find us at thecardinalnation.com in video form, and the audio is always available at the Scoops Sports Network and all your favorite podcast apps. So listen in to this week's, but you can go back and listen to some of our prior um, editions as well. Kyle's been with me now since the start of the year, so we're finishing our third month together, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been the most fun I've had podcasting, honestly, even with that crazy show I do every once in a while. I've enjoyed every week more and more.
All right, so let's start with sort of the low-hanging fruit, if I could, and that is the St. Louis roster. The Cardinals got down to 26 players prior to the move to Memphis for the exhibition. Now they've, of course, moved on to St. Louis and have a day of preparation before a workout day before they play the Twins in opening day on Thursday, with Kyle sitting in the green seats down front.
that's
All right, so let's kind of step through the key rotation decisions that occurred and talk about the ramifications. Probably the most visible was the center field battle between Victor Scott and Michael Ciani. And at least my view was there was a lot of redundancy, and certainly Scott had a tremendous spring. Ciani did not have a good spring, but yet they decided to put both of them on the team. Did that surprise you like it did me?
Yes, it did, Brian. I know that the manager has an affinity for Michael Ciani, and I understand the importance of defensive versatility, especially with the Cardinals pitching staff. But where I have trouble with Michael Ciani, if they're going to run with Victor Scott II as their starting center fielder, where I have trouble is a lot of the bullpen options they have are actually strikeout guys. They're not the ground ball type. They're not really the contact type. So that kind of negates some of the importance of having a late inning defensive replacement on the roster, especially when you're trying to figure out Victor Scott II's capabilities in center, because more than likely what will end up happening, right, is Victor Scott will move to a corner. Michael Ciani will take over center late in games, and Jordan Walker will be replaced more than likely, and Lars Nootbaar will be in a corner. So I guess all that is a ramble just to say that I am surprised. I still don't think Michael Ciani really has a role. I think they would have been better suited bringing somebody who offered a little bit of punch off the bench. But yeah, the manager get what the manager wants sometimes. So what do you think?
Yeah, I've said all along, I think they're redundant, and there's no doubt that Scott outplayed Ciani. They could have sent Ciani to the minor leagues very easily, but they decided not to. And so what that means is the other roster battle was no battle at all, and that was the battle of the Jose's, Jose Fermin versus Jose Barrero. We assumed that the Cardinals wanted somebody who could be the reserve shortstop, and coming into camp, we thought maybe Thomas Saggese would get a shot there. He didn't really see a lot of time. Tons of time this spring, and when he did, he didn't really stand out. Fermin played especially well. Barrero showed hints of it. But Mason Wynn has been banged up a couple of times already, as recently as in that game in Memphis. So, obviously, either one of these guys are only a quick phone, or Saggese, any of the three of them are, only a phone call away. But it's kind of a curious situation where the Cardinals are very thick, if that's the right word, at second base, and very thin at shortstop.
Yeah, thick down the organization. It's the one spot where they seem to have a ton of options with maybe major league capabilities. I am very confused by how all of that went down, dating back to beginning of spring when Brendan Schaefer asked the question, will Brendan Donovan be getting many reps at short? And they're like, no, you don't have to worry about that. That's not something in the cards. And to seeing how this evolved, Jose Fermin, while I liked Jose Barrero a lot more, Mr. Fermin had a really great spring. He did everything, and he continues. Like even last night in the Battle of the Birds, playing left field, throwing somebody out. He's done everything that they've asked him to do. And I thought, all right, he already has the 40-man spot. That's a great spot for him. He's a utility role, a little bit of a bench bat. He's opening his availability throughout the diamond. And when the domino started falling, and the redundancy that was Michael Ciani found his way onto the 26 man, it did not make any sense to me. I think that they're doing themselves a huge disservice because, I think that they think, all right, Mason Wynn's going to play every inning or he's going to get hurt. And it forgets that little gray area where he might wake up with back pain one day and that might linger for 3 days. and then Brendan Donovan's playing shortstop every day. So
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen with Donovan playing shortstop every day. But on the point you made, if Wynn plays every inning, that might actually increase the chances of him getting hurt. I
yeah,
mean, granted, he's a young guy, what, 23, but so it's not as if he's tender or anything. But still, shortstop's a very demanding position. Like I said, he's already been bumped and bruised a few times this spring. So, and I want to make another comment on what you said about calling somebody up. Fermin is on the 40 man, as you said. Barrero is not. And in his prior lives, primarily with Cincinnati, he used all of his minor league options. So if the Cardinals bring up Jose Barrero, they put him on a 40 man, they bring him up, then he's going to need to stay up because they can't option him out. So that's that puts him at a disadvantage in terms of any competition to replace Wynn if he were out for any period of time. Whereas Sajaci and Fermin can, come up and down as they need. So that's a little bit of a disadvantage for Jose Barrero, who I expect, will probably be the starting shortstop, or maybe he and Fermin will, and Sajaci will all, move around the various areas of the infield. Although, they also have Cesar Prieto there on the infield. So the Memphis infield is going to be crowded. And it'll be interesting to see how they, shake out those men, because Hellman and Matt Lloyd's probably going to play first base. So, and Mendoza could be on the roster too. So there's a lot of moving, and not to mention Brian Torres, who earned a promotion from AA to AAA a long time ago, and it would be a shame if he didn't get his chance. He being Brian Torres, but he can also play center field, so that's a possibility.
yeah, yeah. I'm anxious to see, especially. It's just even that lineup that they had in the battle with the Birds last night was kind of an interesting lineup. The first part of it, very intriguing. With major league intrigue between Crooks and Fermin and Barrero and even Prieto a little ways down. But we talk about the tough juggling of lineup that Oliver Marmol is going to have to do at the major league level to get Nolan Gorman at bats and to get Alec Burleson at bats. Mr. Johnson at AAA is going to have his hands full getting everybody in rotation and also getting them at positions that might end up benefiting them when they do make a major league debut. So I'm going to be it's going to be fascinating. This coming weekend we have Memphis games. It's going to be really interesting to see how that rotation shakes out, and also how the players are used that are on the roster.
So we'll do some hot takes early.
Yes.
This one isn't super hot. Kyle quoted, "I do love that Matt Koperniak." Now that's not anything new, but you're restating your admiration for. I guess he was DH, right, in the game.
Yes.
But he's a very competent corner outfielder as well. And there's another guy who had a nice spring, but probably knew coming in that there was going to have to be some kind of injury for him to make the team.
Yeah, the thing about Koperniak is, and I guess if you want to like boil down, maybe get a little crazy here, and I hadn't thought about it when they first announced the Ciani and Victor Scott news. But I think you could argue Fermin and Barrero, they have a more prominent role. They would actually utilize a 26-man spot better. But if you're going to keep an outfielder and you might use him off the bench, I would argue that Matt Koperniak is actually more valuable on the bench. Again, he's a little older. It's not like he's a 23, 22-year-old. He's actually kind of played in a somewhat utility role over the last couple of years in the minors. He's getting everyday playing, but I'm just saying like he has professional hitter capabilities. He has the ability and the mind to come off of the bench and give a key left-handed at bat. And I guess that's kind of redundant because more than likely Gorman or Burleson are going to be your key left-handed bat in most games. It'll probably be one of the two of them. So you don't necessarily need a second one. But
but isn't, pardon me for interrupting,
yeah.
But isn't that better than a defense only guy?
Yeah, I guess the other thing people point out is that Michael Ciani's a great base runner, but who are you gonna like? Wilson Contreras, is he who you're going to take out of the lineup to run?
I hope not. I hope not.
Yeah, you have a team, a starting lineup that's actually built around great base runners. Like Jordan Walker is a really good base runner. Nolan Gorman's a really good base runner. Sure, Alec Burleson's slow, but he's a smart base runner. He has been since his days at ECU. So I think that part of the reason I love Matt Koperniak is where he came from, how he got to where he's at, how he continues to build and grow, how he's introduced bat speed, and how I just think that it would have been a really great story for him to make the major leagues. He's as complete of an undrafted free agent as you can ever have. So it's cool that he's getting some play and that the organization thinks that highly of him. that if there is an injury, I would suspect in the outfield that he's the guy that they call upon.
Yes, I would think so as well. And of course, he earned his 40-man spot over the winter.
Yeah.
The other take that you had when you saw the lineups, you weren't particularly impressed, especially with the Memphis lineup, and you specifically called out Ryan Vilade,
Yeah.
who you hate for absolutely no reason.
Yeah,
Did
Brian,
you did you did you know someone like in your earlier life named Ryan or something that pushed you down on the playground or something or what?
I'm going to need to be hypnotized, Brian, to find out the answer to that one. Somebody's going to need to dig deep into my psychosis, my psychology, my brain, and figure out what's going on there. No, I guess if we really want to, if you don't mind, I'm going to sit on the couch, doctor, and I'll go over some of the psychological issues I have. Because a lot of times you follow these kids for years and years and years and years and years of the system. So when you have a like an injection of a 26, 28-year-old player, I do harbor a weird amount of resentment at the opportunity that those guys get, and it's not fair because I do end up falling in love with these guys, and once I get to see them, like I feel the same way about Brian Torres in a weird way, but Brian Torres entered the organization last year, but he has a really interesting story, so it's a whole different thing. But like, I just see the opportunity, and I'd like to see some of the homegrown guys get that opportunity, and instead of like someone like Ryan Vilade. But
and you're on a great point, Kyle, and that is if your farm system is producing position players like you hope and need, you're not going to need Yohel Pozo. You're not going to need Collins. You're not going to need Hellman. You're not going to need Vilade. Those guys are all veterans brought in because they obviously felt that they needed them to be competitive at the AAA level and that the guys with AA didn't get a chance. But you look at a Jeremy Rivas or a Bushberger or a Nathan Church, even Leonardo Bernal, a Bernal Cooks tandem. And granted, Bernal doesn't have AA seasoning yet, but I still like his ceiling a lot.
Yeah.
And so anyway, to me, it's an organization that says, hey, we don't have enough depth. We got to get some proven 4A guys to fill out our roster.
Yeah, and it makes sense to me why you would get somebody like Hellman or Fermin or Barrero. That makes sense. Like there's a whole lot of position versatility there. But when it comes to like a corner outfielder who hasn't really ever done anything, it ends up being this thing where I hold a personal vendetta until I start watching them. It goes back to Jared Young a couple years ago, Alfonso Rivas a couple years ago. Like that these guys are not major leaguers, and if they make a major league debut, they're not going to do very much. More than likely, not to. I mean, anything could happen, but more than likely, they're not going to do much with their major league debut. They're just going to be there to protect other prospects. But
but Jeremy Hazelbaker had like 2 good weeks.
Exactly, and that's funny because it feels like that's what all of these things are. It's like, hey, we will find our guy who will catch lightning like Jeremy Hazelbaker did. It just seems like a lot of times they make roster decisions based on that kind of stuff. Yeah. But yeah, so again, you really, once I got the Ryan Vilade out of my system and I stepped back and looked at that Memphis roster, it's kind of fun, especially with Jose Barrero in there.
Yeah. So, but let's come back to and we'll talk more about the roster in the context of some of these roster decisions. Oliver Marmol went out of his way to float the fact that they were thinking about a 6-man rotation, but they didn't do it. At least they didn't do it right away. And of course, the dummy figured, okay, the guy they're going to put in as the 6-man in the rotation is the guy that's kicking butt this spring, Michael McGreevy. But they didn't do the 6-man rotation right away. They took Steven Matz out, which wasn't a terrible thing and something they've done before. But yet now we're going to see Matthew Liberatore get another chance, and probably his last chance, to see if he can, cut it as a major league starter with McGreevy going back to Memphis. Were you surprised by that group of moves, and do you agree with it?
I am still very confused by it. I'm both surprised by it and not surprised by it. And it dates back to a conversation that John Mozeliak had on KMOX like a month ago, where he brought up Matthew Liberatore's being in the rotation. Like he kept bringing it up, and Oliver Marmol would bring it up, and then the journalist would ask him, and it would get brought up. And while it doesn't make sense to me, you and I have talked about this almost since the beginning of our time together talking on the podcast. I just want Matthew Liberatore to be in the area where he's comfortable, to get a chance to succeed at the place that he's had the most success. That's why I love him in the bullpen, and I think he can carve out a really great role in the bullpen. But really what it boils down to me, Brian, is I just want him to be in a position to be committed to a position. Only when he first got called up was he like ever a cog in the rotation. Was he ever really given a chance to like be it? Otherwise, they'd call him up and he'd make a start, and then it's like, all right, we're going to give him another start, and then 8 days will pass, 9 days will pass, and he doesn't get a start, and he might pitch out of the bullpen. It's been very inconsistent. Like, so for me, I really want to see them give it a run. Like, I want him in the bullpen. I think he's best suited for the bullpen, but do it. Like, if you're going to put him in the rotation, do it now and give him April, give him May. Like, don't get cute with it is all I'm asking.
Yeah, hopefully they'll show some patience because McGreevy's there. McGreevy will be there in Memphis. He'll be ready. I'm sure he'll continue to pitch well. Quinn Matthews is going to get now his first full start at Memphis. Last year, of course, he came in after having thrown a lot of innings. The other starters there likely Ian Bedell, Sam Robertson, Gordon Graceffo. That's likely the starting five at Memphis. It's a pretty good group. Now, interestingly, on the roster that was published, but it's not final, Tink Hence was also on the Memphis roster. Now, Hence has not been thrown. I haven't seen him throw in a game for the last 2 weeks. He's not hurt, but he's not pitching in spring games. So I'm a little confused. Is Hence going to be in Memphis? And if so, what role is he going to play? So that'll be a story to watch. What's your take on the Memphis rotation?
It's fun. I think it's a lot of fun. Bedell got rocked a little bit by the major league club, especially in that first inning last night in the Battle of the Birds. But yeah, the specs on his pitches are a little different. I'm anxious to see how that is actualized within games. I think we're going to learn a lot about Gordon Graceffo. I don't think you need to dig too deep to see that the organization views him as a long-term reliever. But I think that that's the kind of depth you want there. I'm anxious to see what Sem Robersa can be with that sinker that he's incorporated into his arsenal. I like that. I like it a lot. Tink Hence is really the thing, isn't it, Brian? Like, I don't even know what to think about that.
I don't either. And maybe it'll end up that he's back at Memphis. Certainly based on the spring he had, I kind of thought Roby was the one, Takeo Roby was the one that might be more ready right now. But of course, both of them, Hence and Roby, didn't manage more than 80 innings, either one of them last year. So neither Iron Man. And Cooper Jerpy keeps on keeping on, doing a great job. And at some point, he's going to push past these guys and get to AAA as well. But right now, there's more experienced guys. And, to your point about Graceffo, if at some point a decision might have to be made, and, maybe you prepare these guys for these roles before they get called up. Now, I can go back to Trevor Rosenthal. Trevor Rosenthal was a top starter in the minor leagues, good prospect. He never pitched a game in relief until he got called up to St. Louis. And I can't believe that's the right way to prepare a guy to be a major league reliever, to have him start forever. I get why they start. They want them to work all their pitches, to keep their arm, all those reasons. But at some point before they get called up, if you're going to be a reliever, maybe you should learn how to be a reliever and how to prepare when you're still in AAA.
Yeah, and dating back to Trevor Rosenthal too, even Seth Maness, right? They would send them back down after and then be stretched out to be a starter again. And there's always been that like issue of committing, it seems like, with a lot of pitchers. I believe, and I could be wrong, that they did that with Helsley too when he made his debut. He had never pitched out of relief except for maybe like 3 innings here or there. Comes up, pitches out of the bullpen, goes back down to the minors, and they start stretching him back out. And I get the insurance of it all, but to me, just like with Luken Baker, preparing Luken Baker to be in a bench role, with a spot starts here and there, they would benefit to have guys like Ian Bedell, in my opinion, in the bullpen, because more than likely Bedell is going to make his major league debut and any impact as a bullpen arm. So
yeah, it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard when you see the names Hence, Roby, McGreevy, Matthews ahead of him, even with the fact that Fedde and Michaelis, and will be probably gone next year. He's probably not going to push ahead of all those guys.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so either. I think the back end of that rotation with Robersa and Bedell and Graceffo, I think more than likely those guys, I'm not as high on Sem Robersa as a lot of people. I think he has a susceptible heater. And then when we saw the AAA hitters lay off the fastball, they started eating his cutter alive last year. He has a really great slider and what I think is a sweeper now, technically, a really great slider sweeper, and then a changeup. And those pitches are really great. They're major league caliber pitches. So that's why the sinker is so important, because it'll keep hitters off of his fastball. But like, all that's to say is with the guys below Robersa and Bedell and Graceffa to a lesser degree. Uh, I would like them to put these guys in a position to be relief options and get a little bit of relief experience so that they know how to train their body to do it before they make it to the major league level. They do have some interesting bullpen arms too.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, Ryan Lutus, Riley O'Brien, both on the 40 man, so they would be, some of your guys that might be the first on the I-55 shuttle. Matt Swanson may be coming up from Springfield. It looks like that may be the case. So you've got some guys with some late inning experience. Andre Granillo's there. We know can throw hard. It's just, again, his issue is consistently throwing strikes. Nick Anderson, it looks like he's going to stay with the organization. So, there's some interesting options there.
Yeah, yeah, and I think each one's a little bit more interesting than the other. The one I'm pulling for is Andre Granillo. I'm really excited. I hope he gets a chance to make a major league debut. The Anderson thing is going to be really interesting. Like you said, I guess now, Brian, maybe you know the details of it better. I know that they said that they can option him, but at any point during the minor league season, can he be signed to the major league roster, or does that like end the minute the major?
No, that was a short-term deal, and of course,
Okay.
the Cardinals gave him this deal. It's like the sleeves out of their vest, and for everybody who's not familiar with it, when Nick Anderson came to the Cardinals, they gave him a clause that said, okay, at the end of spring, if you didn't make the team, St. Louis obviously didn't add you to their 40-man roster. We'll make you available to any of the other 29 organizations. And if they have a spot for you on their 40-man roster, the Cardinals get right of first refusal. But if the Cardinals won't do it, then he goes to that other team. Well, let's face it, at the end of spring training, everybody is trying to cut their rosters down. The last thing they're going to want to do is bring in a veteran reliever who had a bad spring. So it was pretty obvious that Anderson wasn't going to get taken by another organization. Then the question was, given his major league experience, he had the opportunity to opt out of his contract and say, I don't want to be with the Cardinals anymore. But the problem is then he's going to have to sign with a AAA deal with another team anyway. So the next step for Anderson, I think he has an opt-out around the end of May where he can decide, again, if the Cardinals haven't brought him up, then he has a chance to leave if he so chooses.
All right, that I couldn't remember like when that ended, if it was something that could have happened. But so yeah, I think he's going to be really interesting. He's the exact kind of pitcher that the Cardinals will go to first. They'll find a spot on the 40 man because he can kind of like waste him or wash him. You can, like they said, that you can bang him off the roster whenever you want. So
that by the way, what Kyle's referring to is kind of the same situation I was talking about with Barrero. If you don't have any options, you can't send them down to the minors. So if they've outlived their usefulness, and they do this sometimes with catchers as well, sort of disposable catchers, they'll bring them up to backfill for a couple of weeks. And since they can't send them down, then they just release them and let them go.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that the one positive thing about where the Cardinals are at is I think their major league pitching staff, granted, the starters are kind of weird with Michaelis and Gray maybe being sick and maybe being hurt and maybe whatever's going on there, Brian.
Hey, listen, all I know is his velocity's way down, and he may have been sick, and certainly he had some discomfort that had to be addressed late last season, which is concerning. I also suspect that might have had something to do with him being less excited about being traded, but I'll never be able to prove that.
Yeah, probably. But I do think that they have some interesting pitching and some interesting pitching depth. And, at least a couple, both relievers and a couple starters to pad them in case they get into some injury trouble or success struggles as they get into May and maybe even June. So I do like where their pitching is at in a lot of ways. And that's even coming from somebody who's been critical of what the current 3 of the 5-man rotation is. So yeah, I think that they're not in that bad of a shape to enter the season as far as pitching goes.
Yeah. Again, the big question is, what Sonny Gray are we going to see on Thursday? Are we going to see the guy who's really effective or the guy who's got knocked around in spring training? And you just hope it's not the latter.
Yeah. That's it. That's it. Yeah, it could be a rough first inning. It could be a rough, rainy Thursday if Sonny Gray is not up to par.
So just make sure you get your hot dogs and your cold drink before the game. Don't get up in the first inning.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's the way to do it.
And there hasn't really been a lot said about the catching job, at least that I have seen. You mentioned you're thinking the possibility is that Pages will have the designated guys that he catches. So there won't necessarily be a start. Herrera won't necessarily be the starter 4 out of 5 days. Do you have any more insight on that? I don't.
No, I just know that it sounds like Pages was the one who was always catching Michaelis, not only in the games but on and this dates back to prior to spring. You cataloged.
Yeah, he always caught him in his bullpens.
Yeah. Yeah, so and also it dates back to last year, how the end of the season went last year, and just some things that we've heard where, Michaelis feels really comfortable with Pages. So yeah, I think the expectation is, depending on injuries, depending on how people are feeling, that you'll see a 60-40 split with Herrera over Pages. It was nice to see Herrera throw, and I say see, I mean here on KMOX, Herrera throw a base runner out the other day. It sounded like even though the guy got a huge jump, he still beat the guy. So that's all positive. Those are the kinds of things you want to see. So that's my expectation.
And you're on a great point there, Kyle. And that is, these are all, I mean, these are some of the best athletes in the world. These guys are world-class athletes. But yet the difference between being successful and not being successful, maybe Herrera can, knock a tenth of a second off his time, but it's confidence. It's feeling like, hey, Yadier Molina probably stepped behind the plate some days where he felt like crap. But it's still, those base runners know, and Molina knows, anybody runs on me, I'm going to throw them out. And
Yeah,
hopefully Herrera can have some success, like you said, early on and get that confidence that he needs to be successful back there. Because I think he has the talent to be a starting major league catcher.
absolutely. I keep the baseball savant pages of both Pedro Pages and Ivan Herrera, the picture of their defensive metrics on my phone, because I'm constantly amazed by it, and I think it gives people an idea of just how difficult it is. So, like for instance, as I look at my phone here, which I never really ever do, I try to be as unprepared as I possibly can, Brian. But
Hey, well, you do answer my texts usually, so that's a good thing.
thank God for that. So, like for instance, Pedro Pages, his pop time is in the 75th percentile in the league. It is a really great pop time. It is 1.93 seconds. That's his pop time. Ivan Herrera's is in the 27th percentile, which would be the blue for the people who do red and blue. Pages is in the red. Ivan Herrera's in the blue, and that's his pop. Go on. I'm sorry.
I was just going to translate for those who are slow. Red is hot. That's good.
Yeah.
Blue is cold. That's not so good. Go ahead.
But Herrera's pop time is 1.93. So you're talking about 1.93 and 1.99. So Herrera is 1.99, Pages is 1.93. And the difference is 50 percentile points basically between the two of them.
Which
But
means
all it's
which means almost every catcher is in that narrow bandwidth at one end or the other.
exactly. And the only difference really is that it for the caught stealing rate for Pages, it was 18%, and for Herrera, it was 14%. So that huge pop time barely had any impact on stolen bases. So I bring that up because during the KMOX broadcast, Benji Molina was very quick to point out that the Cardinals pitchers do not do anything to help either catcher, and that he would like to see them do that a little bit. So,
Spoken like a true catcher, as you
yeah,
would expect.
yeah, exactly. I
They
like
do
that.
and it's an interesting point. I don't honestly know or have ever looked at Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn, how effective they were at holding runners on, but those guys are obviously gone and new starters are in their place. So, perhaps there's an improvement there if the starting pitchers are more diligent.
Yeah, yeah. Our friend over at Viva Alberto's Jake Wood wrote a piece a couple weekends ago about the some of the velocity numbers, some of the time to home numbers, and it was kind of like split. Like half of the pitchers were awful, and half of the pitchers were good. And Pedro Pages' arm is stronger than Herrera's was last year, but my understanding is that they're closer to on par now after Herrera worked this offseason at Driveline to make his arm stronger. Instead of it being like a difference of 5 miles per hour or 4, it's like 1-2 miles an hour. So that's going to be another fascinating thing as we watch pop time in 2025 along with the caught stealing rate.
All right. Well, so that's kind of where we're at right now. As we said, St. Louis will have their opener on Thursday. That roster is set. Memphis roster is close, but they won't announce an official roster probably until Friday afternoon before their home opener that evening. One of the things I've been working on is getting our team of local reporters covering the affiliates set up and in place, and we'll have an announcement on that and who all those folks are in the next few days, and their reports will start once the seasons get going. I'm still providing reports on what's been happening in minor league camp. It's not as exciting with Memphis not there, but yet there are still some good roster battles. And what they've done is now create a Florida Complex League team. So there's still 3 teams basically competing in spring training. But you can see, and if you subscribe, you can see what the working rosters are at the position player level to see kind of which players are lining up. There was a lot of excitement on Monday when Mozeliak stated publicly that Weatherholt's going to be at Springfield to open the season. Those who follow the Cardinal Nation know a week ago I had the Springfield roster, what I think it's going to be, up with Weatherholt in starting position. So, if you subscribe, you get inside information. You get information before other people do. We don't brag about it, but it's there. The other thing that's been going on, it's kind of interesting, is some players have been playing different positions. Guys are getting a little experience somewhere where you haven't seen them. That includes Mr. Weatherholt. So, come and read the Cardinal Nation and find out what's going on in those backfields. And you'll know some things other people don't about the minor league system.
Yeah, Brian, I won't spoil it. I want them to go to the site, but it's interesting to see what they're doing with Noah Medlinger. That's going to be worth keeping an eye on.
Guys who are versatile, and that is part of their advantage, part of their value. It might be the difference to allow him to get that promotion to AAA over somebody else who doesn't play as many positions, who can't backfill it, catcher or second base or third base or left field or right field or whatever it may be.
Yeah, Brian. Before we go, did you have any thoughts about Weatherholt? Just from like what did they say, 5,000-foot view, like about him starting at AA?
It's funny. I was having a conversation with one of our subscribers on our message board about that, and they were doing the second guessing thing, saying, "Hey, wait a minute. Why are they jumping him to AA? Why didn't they bring him to Peoria to spend the last few weeks of the regular season and at least get a taste of high A?" And I said, yeah, in an ideal world, that would be the right way to do it. But that, number one, that was the old regime. That was the old player development regime. The new player development regime doesn't have a track record, first of all. And second of all, coming into September last year, Weatherholt's OPS was 644. He went completely bonkers in September. And maybe he would have done that in Peoria, or maybe he wouldn't. But that confidence that obviously confidence is my theme tonight. The confidence that Weatherholt got just blistering low A pitching in both the end of the regular season and in the playoffs is a huge part, I think, I would guess, of what's allowed him to make that step to AA now. So I'm not bothered by it at all. The Texas League is a great place to hit. Peoria is not a fun place for players to play in April. It's cold, it's wet, it's not. And so, there's a lot of factors that may have gone into it. The only downside is I just hope it's not going to start expectations of, hey, are we going to see Weatherholt in August or September? Which one? It's like, he's got to master AA, he's got to master AAA, and then let's talk about it.
Brian, that always comes, and I don't realize it at the time until I start talking about it and thinking it out. That's always what it boils down to for me is I try to protect the players' expectations. And I would have liked personally for them to start it off a little slower, but there's also an opportunity at Springfield because of some of the position depth issues that they have, where he'll be able to play kind of all over the place, get himself in a position. I do love that they're starting him in a hitter's league. I like that a lot. I wish I kind of missed the days, and it's all changed since COVID, especially losing getting rid of the two lowest levels, the short season clubs after COVID and minor league contraction. I just kind of missed the days where these things seemed a little bit more deliberate. But they are, in their minds, I'm sure they believe they're being deliberate with Weatherholt and that they think he's ready for it. I know they think of the world of his baseball acumen, of his physical build, his mental build. And I would imagine that they believe that he'll be able to work through any struggles he has there, even if he gets off to a terrible start. And it is also, as somebody pointed out to me on Twitter, it's the industry standard now for those advanced college bats to start their, like top 10 picks in a draft to start at AA. It's kind of like the industry standard now. So I get that. I just would have liked for them to start him at Peoria and just see where it went from there. But whatever,
Hey, if at the end of April, we'll be second guessing him if he gets off to a slow start. There's no doubt about it. And if not, then we'll be celebrating and making him the next Mason Wynn. So there you go.
And the good news is, since I've been critical of it, he's going to get off to a good start.
Exactly. That's the reverse psychology works every time.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, thank you for listening and watching another episode of Wednesday with Walton and Reis. We obviously have a lot of fun doing this. Hopefully you enjoy this and get something out of it as well. As Kyle mentioned, by the time we come back to you next time, it'll be a new month, and Major League Baseball will be underway and minor league baseball will be underway as well. So there'll be a lot more to talk about.
Yeah.
So with that, Kyle, any closing comments for this week?
I say it every weekend, but I love doing this, and I'm excited for what's ahead of us. Getting a chance to talk minor league baseball, in action minor league baseball with you next week is something I'm really looking forward to, along with the start of the Cardinal season.
And to that end, for those of you who are out of market, you may subscribe to MLB TV. You should know that minor league baseball TV is included in that subscription, so you can see all the minor league games already. Those of you who are in market would have to subscribe, but it's what, $29.99 a year. It's not much, and you can pretty much see every Memphis, Springfield, and Peoria game, and selected Palm Beach games, unfortunately. But still, you can watch a lot of minor league baseball every evening if you like. And I can tell you, it's something that Kyle Reis does religiously.
I love it. I can't wait. It's almost like a holiday. Every night is like a holiday. It's a jubilation of baseball, Brian.
All right. Well, your love of the game shows through. And again, thanks everybody for listening and watching this weekend. We will see you next time.